In lecture 10, we talked about managing communication. One of the key functions of managers, a lot of managers do, is preparing and doing communication and communicating. We reviewed one of the key theory for that, which was the communication channel, and we showed that actually if we take in perspective communication in a social context, it's a complex story. So obviously somebody is sending a message through communication, but this message, in doing that, they already transform the information, they encode something, but they also choose what to say and how they say it. Now then the media can distort the transmission of information, and especially with poor media, such as short messages or quick emails, as compared to face-to-face, where the interaction can be stronger, can create a vicious circle where the message is not transmitted properly, it's not received as we think it will be received. So there will be a distortion, there will be a noise in the transmission of the message, and that will create a barrier between people.
And so a good manager then is very much aware of the limitations of different channels and the appropriateness of different channels in different contexts, and then the potential noise that might get in the way and distort the transmission. And so to take all of that into account in order to try to get a clear message received on the other side. The other thing is that it's a loop as well, isn't it, Emmanuel?
Yeah.
And so how a good manager is sensitive to understanding what has been received and to taking that back, and to seeing this communication flow between the transmitter, receiver, and back.
And so good communication, avoiding miscommunication, is as much about sending the message as much as listening to the feedback. Now we underlined the importance in communication, especially in a post-bureaucratic context, as it has a very strong connection to power. Basically, when we look at communication as discourse, it's a way to construct reality. By telling a story about something, you transform the way others will look at this thing and the way they will understand it. So if you want to bring people with you and to see the world through, in a converging way to what you see, and to be on board and to work with you, well, you need to tell the right story, and that will be a very important power base for managers to be able to actually communicate their vision, help others to embrace this vision and bring them on board. Obviously from a critical perspective it's further manipulation, but we have covered that as well.
When we talk about organizational design and its relationship to communication, often, particularly in a bureaucratic organization, we might have assumptions about the communication channels as coming from the top and flowing down through different divisions, and finally coming to the receivers at the bottom of the organization. We might also conceive of it as flowing from the bottom up as well. So from the lower levels of the organization communicated up. Of course, there'll be gatekeepers along the way that might stop the communication flow from actually reaching the manager at the top of the organization. In a post-bureaucratic organization, we have a flatter structure, so hopefully that communication will flow much more freely, and we have an understanding that these formal channels, they play a role, but then there is the informal channels as well, and much communication flows through these informal channels.
And so in terms of design, it means that what's really happening in the organization, the real structure of the organization, is a mix of the bureaucratic top-down, bottom-up flow of communication with the horizontal, often less formal communications that will create also the glue of the organization, and that will allow for knowledge to be transmitted and other things to happen that the bureaucratic structure can't deliver.
So a post-bureaucratic organization actually emphasizes those informal channels and wants to encourage that flow of communication through the organization. They see that as a benefit, as an opportunity for the knowledge and insights that expert employees across the organization may have will be shared and dispersed and become the understanding of so it will enrich the organization as a whole.
Then we looked at different levels of communication and what would happen specifically at different levels. So we looked at one-to-one. We say, well, hopefully if the media is rich enough, especially in face-to-face, the the message can be transmitted more easily, the feedback can be quicker. So if the media is rich enough in one-to-one communication, will pick up a lot more than when we are communicating to a bigger group. So one-to-one direct communication, that's what it's about. Now, we underline effects at the group level. That explained a little bit how to avoid also this group thing that we discussed about group. And it's by maintaining an open communication, by allowing the group to connect to external sources of information and knowledge, we can try and prevent the groupthink. So opening to the outside, allowing informal communication and voice to be expressed within the group can lead to actually a much to limit the risk of groupthink. And the final thing in terms of level was to say, well, something that has changed in how the organization communicates with its environment is that we are moving from models from one to many. The organization communicates to all its stakeholders and is in control, to something that enabled by Web 2.0, by social media, by blogs, by all these applications that will create a many-many communication.
And this means that organizations therefore have to be aware of the communication gap, because previously the gap could be hidden. Well, at least organizations might try to manage hiding that gap. That is the gap between the rhetoric and the actual practices in the organization. Rhetoric is in terms of these are our values and our mission and so forth, and we are so ethical and socially responsible, and actual practices that might violate that. If there is a gap previously, it could be hidden to some extent. Today, with many-to-many communication, Web 2.0 forms of communication, these things will be highlighted much more quickly, and it's hard for organizations to escape that. And so there's a need to close that communication gap so that organizational rhetoric and practice is aligned.
Yeah, and that's captured by the idea of the expressive organization that represents something for all its public, and also is composed of managers who will listen and who have this capacity to create a polyphonic environment, so an environment where different voices, different things that stakeholders have to say is actually heard at some level in the organization and is integrated, so that these suggestions, these sources of resistance, but also these good ideas could be answered and could be integrated.
And so the idea here then is for communication to represent actual truth, as opposed to just spin and public relations, but organizations actually trying to communicate the truth of their practice, which is a very socially, environmentally responsible practice.
So a new way of doing business.